Everyone, my name is Bree Cinimo. I am one of 3 athletic trainers here at Deerfield High School, and today I'm going to talk to you all about injury prevention. So like I said, I am one of 3 athletic trainers here at Deerfield. The other 2 are Carl Lindblad and Katie Minsky. This is my 3rd school year at Deerfield, and just a little bit of my background. I completed my bachelor's degree in 2016 and my master's degree in 2017, both in athletic training. And I am actually currently completing my doctorate degree in athletic training as well, online, and I will be finished with that this December of 2021. So I love the field of athletic training and I love working with athletes. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first aspect of injury prevention I want to talk about is muscle imbalances. And what I mean by that is usually this tends to be on muscles of different sides of the body. So let's say the front versus the back. A good example of this is the muscles of the chest, like the pec and the front shoulder muscles versus the muscles of the upper back and the back of the shoulder. So when one of these muscle groups is really tight and strong, and that means that the other one is going to be more loose and weak. And when this happens, that's what we call a muscle imbalance. And those muscle imbalances can put a joint in a position where that joint is more susceptible to injury. So going back to that same example, the muscles of the chest and shoulder, a lot of times in many Americans, are very tight. And so that means that the muscles in the back of the shoulder and the upper back area are weak and they're loose. So what this means is that we see this rounded forward posture, which I'm sure many of you know someone who has this posture. They're rounded forward all the time. It's kind of easy to spot versus being back and open and with good posture. So what this does to our shoulder complex then, especially if we're an overhead athlete, is then when we're trying to throw or swim or hit a volleyball, anything that involves our upper body, all of a sudden we are closed in and we're in a joint position where now we're more susceptible to injury. So that's why we want to correct these muscle imbalances. So in this case, if we're still talking about the same example, we want to try to loosen and stretch the front of the shoulder and the pec area, and we want to strengthen the posterior side of our back and shoulder. So you would do this with exercises like rows or basically anything that involves bringing those shoulder blades back together backwards. You would want to avoid or at least minimize exercises such as push-ups, bench press, things that are involving you moving forward already, because that's already so strong and tight, and we want to strengthen the backside. So, like I said, anything like rows, reverse flies would be good. Basically anything that you can think of that would work the backside. Other muscle groups where this is an issue that we sometimes see, there are many more than this, but just to name a couple, are your quads versus your hamstrings and your thighs. So your quad are on the front side and your hamstrings are on the back side. And so muscle imbalances between those can affect things such as knee injuries or your knee biomechanics, as well as hip muscles and things like that. So that's an important one that we look for. And then we also look at your abdomen, your abdominals versus your back muscles, like your lower back muscles, when we're looking at your core. So if you have really tight, strong back muscles, it could mean that we have some weakness or instability in the front core musculature. So that's just something we would look at for that. But I think the easiest example for everyone to kind of visualize and understand is definitely the pec and the back shoulder muscles. So we do want to attempt to correct these muscle balances to reduce the risk of injury. And so I did make a program that I will show later that has some exercises to address some of these things. But if this is something you're concerned about, especially if it's in muscles other than these ones that I just talked about, please come in and see us, the athletic trainers, and we can do an evaluation, kind of see where these muscle imbalances are, and we can help you fix them. That way we can hopefully avoid possible injuries. The next thing I want to touch on is strength versus flexibility. Now, this is a big one depending on what sport you play and whether your sport tends to focus on strength or flexibility, because many don't focus on both. Many many sports in general would like you to be either very strong or very flexible, and few see the benefit of having both sometimes, but it's incredibly important to have both strength and flexibility. The reason for this is because if you don't have enough flexibility in a muscle, and then you go to make a quick movement, like you take a quick step to the side in your sport and your muscle is not that flexible, you can go past that point where all of a sudden now you might have a muscle strain because it got stretched too far in a quick motion and it didn't have the flexibility to account for that. So that is something that can happen if you're not flexible enough. And then on the other side, if you don't have enough strength or stability in those muscles, if you're too flexible with not enough strength, then the joint itself that those muscles surround can become unstable. And this might lead to something such as a sprain of a ligament in a joint, or it can even lead to more serious injuries, depending on the joint and the muscles that are involved. So it's incredibly important to have a good balance of both. So even if you play a sport where strength is the big focus, you should also be working on your flexibility. And if you're playing a sport where flexibility is a big focus, such as gymnastics, dance, things like that, you also should still be working on strengthening. And both of those sports tend to have strong muscles associated with them as well, but it's just important to remember that we need to have a balance. And again, if you are worried about anything like that you think you might need more flexibility, you might need more strength, that's something that we can definitely help you figure out. So just come in and talk to us and we're happy to help. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is nutrition. And nutrition is a big one for your overall athletic performance and making sure that that is as good as it can be. However, nutrition really does need to be individualized. So I'm just going to give very generic and general information today. And then if you have any questions specific to you, your sport, your body, please, like I keep saying, just come see us and we can talk about it more in depth for you, especially for the nutrition aspect. But I do just want to give some tips and some information so that it can help everybody. The biggest thing that I think a lot of high school athletes don't remember is when you're in season, you need to eat more calories. So when you're not playing your sport and you're active for maybe, let's say, an hour a day, an hour every couple days, whatever your activity level is outside of your sport, your calorie needs are, let's say, they're somewhere around here. Well, when you're in season and you're practicing 2 to 3 hours every single day, 5 to 6 days a week, playing games for 2 to 3 hours, competitions, things like that, your calorie needs go up quite a bit. So it's important to remember that you can't just keep eating at the same calorie level that you did in the off season when you're in season. So this doesn't necessarily have to mean more meals or more food. It could mean more calorie dense foods. And that gets a little bit complicated, but again, if you want to talk about those specific foods, we definitely can. But just in general, you can always do your own research. Just eating more calories during a season is extremely important. And then another big thing that we have seen plenty of issues with in our own athletes here at Deerfield is the timing of meals before your activity. So you want to make sure that you're eating close enough to practice or a competition to sustain the activity for the whole time, but not so close to the activity that you have the potential to upset your stomach. So if you have practice at 4 o'clock, you may decide through some trial and error that the best time for you to eat is 2 o'clock. And maybe you eat a good hefty snack, but not a whole meal. And that's enough for you, then that's great. Some other people will need something different. Some people might need to eat 30 minutes before practice, and it might need to be a little snack. That way that they can sustain themselves through practice. It really is just going to take some trial and error, but just in general, trying to find that exact timing for you so that we don't end up out of energy, feeling lightheaded, feeling sick to our stomach because we have absolutely nothing left in the tank and we are running on nothing, versus eating so much or so close to activity that we all of a sudden have a full stomach and now we are running and we feel like we're going to get sick. We don't want either of those. So the type of food to eat before activity, I would definitely say kind of on the lighter side, yet a satisfying meal before activity a few hours before would be good. Again, to keep you fueled for that activity session, but not bogged down. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest a heavy, greasy burger and fries an hour before practice, because that is going to kind of sit in your stomach for a while, and it can definitely lead to some stomach upset during practice. But something a little bit lighter, like a chicken breast and some broccoli, vegetables, whatever you like, might be just enough a couple hours before to get you through that. There also is the concept of low, high, and medium glycemic index carbs, and they all kind of release their carbohydrates at different rates. I'm not going to get into that specifically. If you would like to look into that and research that, especially if you are more of an endurance athlete, then that might be a good thing for you to look into. But again, we can always talk about that with you in person as well. If you want to talk about it, just come in and speak with us. But that is just another aspect of nutrition, because those carbs do get released at different timing, and then it will kind of refuel your body differently. So that's about as far as I'll go into about that. And then the timing of your meals after activity, within 30 minutes of you finishing practice, or especially a lifting session, you want to have a meal of good, healthy carbohydrates and protein, because carbs refuel your glycogen stores, but protein assists with muscle building. So I'm sure many of you might have heard that chocolate milk after you work out is a good thing, and it is. It's a good drink if you would like that. It has protein and it has the sugar, which is the carbs. So it's refueling both of those. However, I will say that just drinking chocolate milk alone is not enough. You should also be eating a good, healthy meal as well. And within 30 minutes is really the key, so that it can get in your body and start to refuel you. All right. Next, I'm going to talk about hydration. So with hydration, I think a big question for a lot of people is Gatorade or water or Powerade or whatever other sport drink you like. So I think a lot of people tend to think that anytime they're playing sports, they need to have Gatorade. Either that, or people really just dislike Gatorade altogether and they only want to drink water. I feel like people are often very much on one side of the spectrum or the other. However, really, as a rule of thumb, Gatorade is good for you to drink during practice if it's going to be greater than 1 hour. So if you have a 2 to 3 hour practice session, some Gatorade would be awesome. The reason for that is because Gatorade has that sugar. It also has sodium and other electrolytes that you will be sweating out to replace those in your body. Whereas water doesn't have those same electrolytes. It will keep you hydrated, but it's not going to replace those nutrients that you're sweating out. But if you're not practicing for an hour and you guys have, let's say, a light session that's only going to be like a 45-minute time thing, then there's no need to drink Gatorade, because you're not going to be doing enough to have that much of your fuel depleted to where you would need to refuel it with something like Gatorade. So regardless of whether you bring Gatorade along or not, you should also bring water. So if you're bringing Gatorade, bring both. If you're bringing just water, then bring just water. But water is extremely important, because while Gatorade will help hydrate you, water does that better. That is just what water does. So how often and how much should you drink? So we don't want to be drinking nothing, because then we'll get very dehydrated. But we also don't want to drink too much, because that could cause our stomach to be upset, and it also could make us get sick. So every 15 to 20 minutes, it's recommended to drink 6 to 8 ounces of water during exercise. And that's a kind of a hard number, hard concept to kind of visualize and understand. So I think an easier way to break it down is each time your coach gives you a water break, or you have a timeout, or you come off the field during a competition, whatever the case is, every time that happens, try to take around 5 gulps of water, like a good gulp. That gulp is usually around 1 ounce of water. So instead of having to try to count how many ounces you're drinking, just count your gulps. And if you take about five to six, then you would be drinking enough water to keep you hydrated. The important thing is we don't want to be chugging half a bottle of water every time that we are on a water break either, because like I said, that can make our stomach upset and that can cause us to get sick or just feel really bogged down. It can start to affect our performance just by having us not physically feel well. And then last, I just want to touch on again, nutrition and hydration both really do need to be customized to you. So any questions or if you want any help with any of this, please come see us and we will definitely help you with that. Okay, the last section I want to talk about is I made a home exercise program for all of you. It is pretty large. It has a lot of things in it. I don't expect anyone to do all of them. I think that would take way too much time. But all of the movements are there for you to decide what you would like to do, and then you can kind of pick and choose, and you can you can do the exercises, in any order that you want to. So before I get into that, I do just want to touch on my last little thing here, which is just a very general how the athletic trainers can help you other than what I've talked about today. So if you have any pain or issues, head issues, if you're feeling overly fatigued, you are feeling like you don't have enough energy to sustain practice, anything like that, anything that with your physical body when you're playing sports at Deerfield, please come in and see us. For those of you that don't know where our room is, we are located right next to the weight room. So if you are coming from the perk or the weight room, you would just keep walking past the weight room, and the very next door is our room. We share that window with them. So if you're ever in there, you can see into our room. So please come in, talk to us. We are happy to evaluate what's going on. We will talk to your parent or guardian and tell them what we're thinking is happening. We'll all work together to decide on the best next step for you. Oftentimes we can address the issue in the athletic training room and call it good. We can help you throughout the days, weeks, and get you back to feeling good. But sometimes we do need a little bit of outside help. So we have a very good network of doctors that we work with in the area. We work with Illinois Bone and Joint, North Shore, even a couple of Northwestern physicians. So wherever you like to go, we pretty much know a physician at that. We also have one at Lori's Children. So really, pretty much for the most part, any group you can think of, we know a doctor there and we can get you in. And then the last thing I want to touch on is a step kind of in between us and a doctor is going to physical therapy. And you can now go to physical therapy with no doctor's note. So we don't have to go to see the doctor before we go to therapy. So we have really, really good relationships with our local athletical clinics. We can get you in very quickly, usually within 24 to 48 hours, and we can get you seen there for either a second opinion or for some more in-depth care that has just a little bit different approach than what we can give you. So both options are really, really great, and when we work in combination, we see a lot of success with our athletes. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly, and I will show the home exercise program now. So I do have an access code for this that I will include. I will share it. Or if anyone would like to see it, you can actually just email me. I will share my contact information as well. And then we can go ahead and get this to you if you would like it in a PDF for yourself. But I'm just going to kind of scroll through the exercises. So the first one I put on here is a standing gastroc stretch, which is your calf, one of the muscles of your calf. And so she's showing you how to do it here, and then it gives you the instructions. The next one is similar to the gastroc stretch, but it's for your soleus, and the only difference is you have a slight bend in your knee instead of your knee being straight. The next one I'm sure you've all seen is a standing quad stretch. And then I have a seated hamstring stretch on a table. You can use a couch, a bed, anything you have at home. Or if you're in the athletic training room, we do have these treatment tables that you can use. Next, we have a supine gluteus stretch. I think that the muscles of the hip in general are often neglected and we don't think to stretch them as well as we should. So I put a supine glute stretch here. And then another muscle that I see tight in our athletes all the time is their piriformis. So I put a quadruped piriformis stretch on here. This one is really good for a lot of athletes. They really tend to like that one. And then this one is for your back musculature. It's just called a seated flexion stretch. And she's showing you how to do it there. And then this one is more to open up that front chest like I was talking about earlier. So this is called an open book. So you can see she's going to keep her knee on this foam roller. You can use anything you have that would keep your knee at about this height. And then she's just going to open up her chest and follow her hand with her head. That way we're really trying to open up this area, get some good stretching, and get some flexibility there. Another good stretch to open that part up is a doorway pec stretch at 90 degrees. And so she's showing that to you here. And then going back into the legs, a side lunge adductor stretch. Those are kind of like your groin muscles on the inside. This is a good stretch to get those. So those are all the stretching exercises, and now we're going to get into a little bit more of the strengthening and stability exercises. So some really important ones are for the outside of your hip. That is important for most lower body issues you could be having. Hip, knee, ankle. Most of them we will tackle your hip musculature because a lot of times those muscles on the outside are weak and they're not doing their job, and then it's causing issues down the chain. So one of the most common ones we use, and one that would be really good for all of you to do at home, is a clamshell. You can use a resistance band if you have one. You don't necessarily need one. So she is going to show you how to do that here. Another one is sidestepping with a resistance band if you have one at your ankles. And then a good total lower body exercise that you can do is a reverse lunge. A lateral lunge is also a really good one, so I put that in here as well. And then to again work on those hip muscles and as well as some back musculature, we have a supine bridge. So I have two bridge variations. This one is with a resistance band where you're going to squeeze out against push out against the resistance band to try to get a little bit more of those glutes activated again and those outside hip muscles. Whereas the next one, you're going to be squeezing something between your knees and then lifting up. So it's going to get those adductors, those groin muscles on the inside of your thigh. It's going to tackle those. So whichever one you think, or you can actually do both, it's going to, again, work the core muscles in the back as well as the glutes and whichever side of the hip muscles you want to tackle. Going back to upper body, we have a scapular retraction, which is really just this motion. I don't know if you can tell. I'm just squeezing my shoulders back, keeping my shoulders down and not scrunching up here. And she kind of shows you that as well, but that is just a good one to try to get that good posture. And then I talked about doing some rows to strengthen up the posterior side of the shoulder and upper back muscles. So a good one would be something like this standing row. You don't have to use a bent over row. You don't have to use a resistance band. You could use a dumbbell. You can use anything you have. If you're at home, you can use anything with weight. You can use a jug of milk if you want. You can use laundry detergent. Really anything that has some weight to it, you can use. And then for the core, we have a plank with hip extension. So this is obviously going to work your core with the plank, but it's also going to get some of that glute and the muscles of the hips and legs with that hip extension. And then I have a side plank with hip drop. So that will work the core again, but it will also get some oblique muscles and some other muscles of the core by dropping that hip and then bringing it back up to center. So that is all the exercises I made. One thing I did forget to mention about this exercise program is the code that I have that I can give to you instead of just this PDF. If I give you the actual code, you can go on the website and open it, and it will show you a video for how to do all of these as well. So if the picture itself isn't enough of an explanation and you want the video, just let me know and I can get you that code very easily. So I think that is all for me. Thank you so much for watching this video and tuning in. And again, if you ever need anything, please come and let us know. We're happy to help. Thanks.